You got the food
visited
thing,
my apartment and saw
the comic books,
videotape collections. Yeah, it's that weird completist autism.
I'm going to talk a little bit about this controversial hypothesis, which tries to link autism with our sex, our gender. So the line is going upwards, a positive correlation that the higher the child's fetal testosterone, the more that the parent is rating the child as having stronger interests in systems of one kind or another. For example, collecting the whole set of something systematically.
And I call it completist autism.
Really? Some people call it obsession.
Well, yeah, but I think it goes beyond obsession where, it's one thing to obsess on one thing, like I'm, someone that's obsessed with, a certain conspiracy theory or a public figure.
Yeah.
But I always had that I've got to have the complete run of everything, be it a comic book or, certain artists. I got to have everything that they put out.
You're watching House Call. A child with autism's wild tantrums were driving his parents apart. All the while, little Rowan Isaacson was becoming unreachable, as they described it. You talked about this great adventure that you and your son were embarking on. What was the adventure?
Well, the adventure, it seems a little mad, but we ended up going to Mongolia, traveling on horseback from traditional healer to traditional healer, really consulting with them about his autism. You wanted to stay there, didn't you? Well, I expected him to be tantruming like that because he didn't want to see the shaman and didn't want to be in the tent, not because he had to leave. That's extraordinary. It's wonderful.
He said the parents have to prepare his drum and the costume. Means he believed, the shaman believed Rowan may become a shaman in the future.
And you were going to the comic book store and you would leave with like a box, a monthly habit. I'm like, I can't get in this deep. I'm going to stick with cocaine and booze. This guy can, yeah. But you made the right choice. I think you actually helped your brain as I turned mine into Jell-O.
Yeah, but I also remember back then that with comics, and I think back on how I would talk to people about comic books or movies, and I just shudder because I must have been like one of those village elders, like in shaman times, that you ask them a question and they have to tell you the entire oral history of the village. They can't just answer the one specific question. Like if you say, "Hey, is Hellblazer good?" and then I would go, "Well, Jack Kirby started." I would just go all the way back to the beginning. It was just fucking insane. It was so sad.
Yeah, how did I not? Of course, you scared me out of it. I'm like, yeah. There's no way that I'm ever going to know what he knows. And you know what? I'm not sure I want to.
One way of explaining an illness is to say, oh, this person's sick. Another way of explaining an illness is to say, this is a different type of person, and they will have a different role in society. One of the most common things that anthropologists have found among healers like shamans is that almost always people who are shamans, no matter whether they're in East Africa or whether in Central Asia or South America or Australia, they have gone through some sickness. And often that illness is an illness with a constellation of symptoms that are certainly neuropsychiatric. The shamans don't show neurological symptoms because they're shamans. They become shamans because they had these neurological symptoms. We don't know why, but one thing we do know is that the line between what is a shaman and the line between, say, a psychoanalyst is not that clearly drawn. We are one of the few societies that treat neurological and psychiatric difference by creating institutions where we separate people completely from society. Most other cultures aren't like that.
On the left is a drawing of a horse done by Nadia when she was 5 years old. She could do this when she was 2.5. She couldn't talk. She had very poor social interactions, but she could draw a horse that would jump off the page. I compare this horse to a horse that Leonardo da Vinci did at the prime of his career, one of the greatest artists of all time. You see, her horse is comparable to his. If you take a normal 8-year-old child, they draw a stick figure of a horse. Now, what is so fantastic is Pablo Picasso pointed out there is no precocity in art. So there are many Mozarts. To be a great composer, many kids start composing at a very early age, 3, 4, 5. Mathematicians can start very early. But Picasso claimed you don't get a sense of perspective, of line and shadow, until you're 9, 10, 11 years old. He could not draw a horse like that when he was 5 years old.
This is a striking result when I tell you that the group with the diagnosis were chronologically younger than the group without. So here these children with Asperger's syndrome were aged 7 to 11 years old, taking a physics test in mechanics and using material that they hadn't been taught at school. The control group were teenagers in my home city of Cambridge who were aged 12 to 16 years old. There were 20 items in this test, and you can see that the typical teenagers were struggling with this test. So it's reminding us about something that's becoming more familiar, that here autism or Asperger's syndrome is a disability when it comes to understanding the social world, but isn't always a disability when it comes to understanding the physical world, and can even lead to precocious ability or islets of ability or talents. I think it's very important that we do learn to live with autism, in the sense that there's a lot of adjustments our society can make to become more autism friendly.
I really hope that as people learn more about autism, they will see autism as a form of diversity.
You know, I think we need to figure out a way to prevent some of the most severe forms of autism. But you certainly do not want to get rid of autism genetics. And I get asked if I could snap my fingers, would I want to be not autistic? No, I wouldn't be, because I like the clarity of thought that I have.
I think the thing that's so remarkable is how much our lives have changed since coming back. It's just, it's night and day. I can't even tell you how different it is.
What's your name?
Strong.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
He's just charming. He's just
a brilliant kid.
He is. And his kind of quirky way of looking at the world is precisely what makes him so charming and interesting and fun and funny.
And that I've got no interest in trying to change.
None at all. No, quite the opposite, actually. It's what makes him so wonderful.
This is Curious George. He lives in the zoo. He was a good little monkey.